we are going to discuss the strange case of the Sodder children. This takes place on Christmas Eve of 1945 in Fayetteville, West Virginia. A home filled with laughter and preparation and family warmth becomes the stage for one of the most perplexing and haunting missing persons mysteries in American history. It began like many holiday evenings do. The Sodder family was preparing for Christmas Day. They sang together, they baked, they checked their lists and made sure the firewood was stocked for the long winter ahead. But what happened shortly after midnight would change everything forever. At approximately 12:30 a.m., fire broke out in the Sodder home. George and Jen Sodder, the parents, were awakened by smoke and noise. They sprang into action, arousing their children and trying desperately to beat back the flames. But something was wrong. The fire didn't behave like a normal house fire. It grew in strange ways, and doors that should have been open were jammed. Windows that should have been easy to break were unyielding. And George struck the windows with a rock again and again, but they didn't shatter. His hands were cut and bloodied from the effort, and smoke choked the room. And the voices of the children inside were fading. This is a quote from George. They sounded farther away than the fire should have allowed. This was a detail investigators could never quite explain. Firefighters finally arrived, but when the flames were subdued and the smoke cleared, something just didn't add up, because no human remains were found. No bones, no ashes, not anything that could be conclusively tied to the 5 missing children. And modern investigators later confirmed what many suspected. The fire never reached a temperature hot enough to cremate bodies completely, meaning if someone had died inside, there should have been remains, but there were none. Of the 10 Sodder children, 5 vanished without a trace. So we have Maurice, who was 14, Mary Frances, who was 12, Elizabeth, 8, Martha, who was 5, and Jenny, 9. The other children escaped, some with injuries, but all 5 listed above were never seen again. Earlier that evening, long before the house began to burn, the Sodder home received a bizarre phone call. Nobody on the line spoke. There was only breathing, heavy and slow, deliberate breathing. Then the call abruptly ended. Nobody recognized the voice. And here's the part that made the Sodders uneasy. The call came from a disconnected phone line. When George's brother checked with the phone company, they confirmed something chilling. That specific phone number had been disconnected for months. When George and his daughter Mammy went to the bedroom windows, the most accessible escape route, they found them impossible to break. Not because of glass thickness, but because, according to George, the windows had been coated with some kind of substance that made them stronger. Neighbors tried from the outside. They struck the windows with rocks and even a wrench, with no success. It's as if someone had prepared those windows to not be opened in an emergency. And yet, nothing about the fire behaved like normal science would predict. Some firefighters on scene later reported hearing a loud explosion just as the blaze started. A blast that seemed too powerful to be a simple electrical fire or candle mishap. That detail fueled speculation that the fire might have not been an accident after all. But if it was intentional, then where were the children? Again, no remains, no evidence, no trace. Years later, long after the case had gone cold, the Sodders received a photograph in the mail. It showed a young man, grown older, someone who bore a striking resemblance to Maurice Sodder, the eldest of the missing children. On the back merely were 3 words: Louis Sodder, I love brother Frankie. There was no explanation, no return address, just those words, and the unshakable implication that someone might have survived. For years after, the Sodder family clung to hope. They searched, they followed leads, they plastered posters across states, but no child was ever found. To this day, investigators are divided. Some say the missing children perished in the fire and time simply degraded their remains beyond recovery, though scientific analysis suggests that that should be unlikely. Others believe the fire was a cover-up, staged to hide something else entirely, with the children taken before the blaze. And then there are the eerie details that just don't fit. The disconnected phone call before the fire, the windows that couldn't be broken, evidence of a possible explosion at the start of the fire, and the photograph mailed years later suggesting survival. Not one theory answers every question, and not one explanation fits every detail. And that perhaps is the most unsettling truth of all, because a fire, even a terrible one, should have left answers. But this one left only questions, and a possibility that the Sodder children may still have walked out of that Christmas Eve without ever being seen again.